Thank you all so much for coming. It's so nice to see familiar faces that endured 3 years of this, and you're here, and it's on. And thank you to Thom for hosting us in Toronto and now here in New York City.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let me ask you how you got into this story in the first place.
I met Bunker at Sundance, and there was a program that had been set up to put social entrepreneurs that were changing the world along with filmmakers to see whether there was any kind of chemistry to make a film about what they're doing, so that it's kind of good for the organization, and hopefully you can make a great film. And when he said that he was training grandmothers from around the world to go to this college in India to learn how to become solar engineers, I had to see it. So that's when he agreed to let us film the next session of his college, and Mona and I went and met Rafea, and the rest is you see in the film.
So, I talked about my introduction, how there's so many points in the story where it feels like you might not have a story. Can you talk about how you coped with that, the twists and turns the story took?
Well, when Rafea first went to the college, we actually thought that she was the best in the class. Her first interview, you could tell the level of intelligence and drive and everything. So when we started getting the calls back in New York City that she wanted to come home, we were actually shocked. We thought, oh, she gave in, she can't take the insects and the hot, spicy food, she misses her kids, she wants to go back. And lo and behold, when we went back to Jordan, we found out the truth that her husband wanted to divorce her, steal the kids, and she would never see them again. And then it went on from there, about 10 trips to Jordan total and 3 trips to India, and it went on and on and on. We didn't know the outcome, but the story still continues.
I want to go to the audience for questions, but let me anticipate an obvious one. Can you bring us up to date on the characters in the story?
Okay. Well, as you might expect, there's no simple solution to poverty, and the men in the village continue to obstruct the project. You see Badr, her aunt's husband, Abu Badr. Basically, the village was supposed to set up a community-based organization where each house gives about a 15 dinar a month payments to the women, and they have electricity, and they get maintenance and repair. But the men took a flat payment from each house and gave them peanuts. So now what's happening is the Barefoot College is setting them up with a solar lantern enterprise, and they're just at the beginning stages of that, but hopefully they'll excel.
The question, if you didn't hear it, is when they first got to India, were there translators there to facilitate?
No, and that was actually part of the difficulty with us filming, because we're supposed to be these sort of invisible cameramen, and every time they didn't understand what was going on, Rafea or Badr would turn to us and be like, you just tell them what we're trying to say, translate for us. And so there's a lot that's not in the film, which is basically that. So there are no translators. It's all sort of sign language, and yeah.
And is the lack of translators just lack of resources, or is there an actual kind of philosophy that they're going to speak across language?
Yeah, I mean, that's the philosophy of. It's worked in the past for all of the different classes. The women are able to pick it all up and ultimately learn, although it's very difficult in the beginning. And I think it was a very new thing to have somebody who spoke the language there with us. No, the Indian teachers had never been in a situation where somebody could...
Where they could actually communicate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we caused lots of trouble in that way.
The question was, how much a role did you play in Rafea's life? Would she have gone back to India if not for your being around?
Well, as a filmmaker, you're not supposed to intrude, of course. After seeing that conversation she had with her mother and her sister-in-law that I want to go back was basically within 24 hours. So she would call us all the time, make me an appointment at the ministry, that kind of thing. We pushed. We had to. And I think we played a big role because we inspired her, because we gave her feedback and confidence when we saw her. So it was constantly, we've never seen anybody like you, you have to keep going, and this and that. So confidence-wise, definitely.
Did the husband ever try and get rid of the film crew?
No, I think he was very intimidated because the first time we met him, we came down to the village with Raouf Dabbas from the Ministry of Environment, and they thought I was a journalist. So, government journalist, he had been in jail before. I'm going to stay away from this. So it was only after 6 weeks she went back. His friends started teasing him, how can you let your wife run around like a prostitute, and this and that. And every time the camera was there in the village, he would pop by. He actually doesn't live there. He lives with his other wife. So he'd be present for the camera. Once he stuck a knife to my neck, but it was in jest.
Besides Rafea, do you have any updates on the other women?
Yeah, it's been, and obviously we had to focus on Rafea, even if, I mean, I don't speak Maasai or Spanish or any of the other languages that were being spoken. So it was difficult, obviously, to really understand the deep thinking that was going on with the other women when you can't communicate. But we have gotten an update. The project's been successful in Kenya, in Guatemala, Colombia, pretty much every place except, I mean, Jordan's the place where it's really been very difficult.
The women got so close at the college, is there any attempt to reunite them, or do they have any communication?
Well, the Skoll Foundation and Sundance Institute has partners with a third organization called Tomorrow Partners. They've developed an app and a tablet where they can actually in the future communicate to each other.
Can you talk about where this film is going now? It's part of a larger project called Why Poverty, which is a series of films by different filmmakers set in different countries, looking at stories like this that tackle different aspects of poverty, and what's happening with that project.
All of these films were initially supported by a group called Why Poverty and a number of broadcasters around the world. So I think it's something like 60 broadcasters which will all show the films, a different version of the film. It's a 58-minute version of the film. You guys are seeing the feature, which was a real joy for Mona and I to make, because we got to put in everything that we had to cut out of the shorter version.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks especially to Mona and Jehane.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next time. Alhamdulillah. Thank you.